All right, hello and welcome to my final project presentation. I'm Genevieve Lalonde, and this project is for Voice Assistants and Chatbots in summer term 2022. So for this project, I have created GreenThumb, which is a gardening assistant. I decided to create this project because I'm a bit of a fiend for gardening, as you can see here in my garden pictures. So I've been working on the place where we're living right now for a couple of years. I'm happy to say that the berry patch looks a lot more developed than this currently. However, I do like all the flowers back then. I've learned to pick my radishes before they get to be dog-sized. So I've been learning a lot. And I thought that creating a chatbot here would be a good way to share some of that knowledge. This is one of the tools that I've been using. Portland Nursery offers a lot of free flyers. They've got a whole stand of them that you can select on various topics when you walk in the door. And this is the veggie calendar. So it's telling you what plants you can plant in different months of the year. But this is very information intense. And so it actually wasn't until I was programming this in that I realized, for example, you can plant arugula pretty much every single month of the year. So that's good to know now. But I've been using this for over a year and I hadn't realized that. So I thought that putting it in a different format, like with a chatbot, could be a way to bring some of those things to your attention a little bit more clearly. So without further ado, let's go check out the demo. So I created the chatbot in Dialogflow here in Google Actions. I'd actually used full Google Actions before this for one of the homework assignments, but I'd only used Dialogflow for the class examples, and so I wanted to get another chance to dig into it a little bit deeper. I had some problems with Google Actions. I didn't find the themes very intuitive, and so that's one thing that I benefited from here, is that you don't have themes that control your conversation flow. You can program it instead with context and things like that. But I did find that the way that you set up your intents and your entities and your fulfillment with a webhook was all really similar. So that converts back and forth really easily. You can see I've got in here a couple of the default intents, like the fallback if something isn't recognized, the welcome intent. I did change it a little bit. So this pops up right when you first open it as a welcome. It's triggered by those types of welcome events. You can say hello. I added particular hellos for my app. And then I have it responding with some useful information about how to use the app. And they do say if you want to look for more information, you can ask for help. So let's go take a look at that intent. I don't want to save any of those changes. I just clicked around. Let's go take a look at the help intent. Just again, basic intent here. Doesn't have a lot of information, but I offer just a couple of responses that have example statements and things like that. So just more detailed information. And then I created a few different types of intents in here. So from that veggie calendar, I created 2 different directions. One is a plant on date intent. So you can say, what am I going to be planting today or tomorrow? Or you can say in September, so like a time period. Or you can look at a particular date, like the 18th of June. And I was really impressed by this. For example, what can I plant today and what can I plant tomorrow? If you take a look at the fulfillment, I didn't actually have to handle those myself. The natural language understanding algorithm was able to do that for me. So if we take a look in here at the what to plant handler, here we are, where I'm just taking that agent parameter, the date time or the date period, which is for the month, and I just store that locally. I don't have to do anything else to it. So that was a really nice benefit of using Dialogflow, that has already handled that. And you can see in here, I added a little bit of finesse, for example, with my response. I was really proud of this. I actually have a few different responses that you can give, and it tells you based on the date or the period that you have. We've parsed out just what the month is, and it gives a different plant just randomly selected. from this object. I created plantings, which for every single month, it tells you all of the things that you can plant that month. January is pretty cold. You can only really plant radish. For example, February has a lot more things. So this intent is just randomly selecting one of those and recommending that you plant that in that month. Let's go back to our intent. And let's go the other direction. So if we give a particular date, it'll tell us what plants we can plant then. Now, if we want a particular vegetable, it'll tell us when we should plant that one. And you can see in here, I've got a custom intent, a custom entity called plant. So let's go and take a look at that. And you can see I've just entered most of the vegetables from that flyer so that it can detect those in my intent. And in this intent, that's another thing that's different, say from Alexa skills, is instead of just providing an argument here, we're actually providing examples. So I expect that that is also helping the agent further to be able to detect what is in that custom entity. So let's go. Again, I don't want to save any of my random clicking. Let's take a look at that webhook. Scroll down to the bottom. So this is using the same object. Let's take a look at planting. So the other one that we did was kind of an intuitive direction. You can look up, use the key to look up the value of radish. So now what we're going to be doing is, given radish, I want to return all of the keys in which it occurs. This is kind of a database question of how do we want to structure our data. It's a little bit more difficult to go in the reverse direction. So let's see how we did that. All right, so the when to plant handler. So you can see what I did here was I iterated over all of the keys, and for each of them, I checked whether that plant is included in the list, and if so, then I'm storing those keys into its own list called the acceptable months. And then I just join that list with and at the very end and return that. So it takes a little bit more handling to go in that direction. It's not just a single lookup. All right, let's go back to our intents and take a look at the garden tips intent. So this is another one. It was inspired from the cat facts, which was used as a lot of examples in class that gives facts about cats. And I wanted to share some of the interesting things that I've learned about plants over the years. So we've got our training phrases up here. And down here, I was going to do it like we did in class, where you just have a list and you randomly return one of those. But as I was creating this, I realized that in the responses section here, it automatically just randomly pulls one of these anyway. So we don't really need to pull that, program that into a webhook. So I went ahead and typed in a bunch of interesting things, and I entered 30. I actually would have entered 31, but it turns out that 30 is the limit. So I hope that you're happy with just 30 plant facts. And our final intent. This is the whether to water intent, which is kind of fun to say. So you can see here, we can ask about whether we should water today. And this is automatically detecting these. I didn't actually put any of these in. It's detecting, do we really care about today or a different day? Do we really care about Portland, or we could put in a different city or state? And I'm not actually handling any of these because I created this gardening assistant specifically for the Pacific Northwest. So I'm automatically scoping it to Portland, Oregon, and today when I reach out in my webhook. But this is something that I could consider doing in the future, is handling these. And I'm doing an API call. So I could send those parameters to the API. But for now, I'm just keeping it scoped to the Pacific Northwest. So let's take a look at the fulfillment for this. And it's the very last one. You can see in here, I'm using Axios as we did in class, and I'm doing an API call to Eris Weather. And then I handle the response. I check how much precipitation we are expecting today. Here I am handling the object. And I decided if there is less than 7 millimeters of precipitation expected today, then we'll recommend to water, otherwise we don't. I calculated that because about 2 inches of water per week is good for your vegetables. So that's about 7 millimeters per day. We've got some error handling in there as well. Let's take a look at that. So I found Eris Weather. It's a free weather API. I experimented with a couple of them, but this was the easiest to connect to and the freest. A couple of them make it seem as though they're offering a free service, and then once you get subscribed, they charge for different kinds of things. But this one was really good. And I liked working with Rapid API in class for a couple of different APIs. Because it offers this API documentation section. This is part of Rapid API, not part of Eris Weather. But you can see all of the access points. I'm using forecasts. And in here, you can actually test the endpoint. You can add parameters in here. I've added in Portland, Oregon. You can filter it and add different things. And then you can go ahead and test it, and you'll actually get a result over here. You can see code snippet. This is what you can include in your code, which, yeah, I pretty much just copy pasted that exactly. And then this is what is most helpful, is you can see the return object and drill down into the parts that you actually want. So this was really helpful when I was determining how to handle it. So I'd recommend using that in the future. All right, so let's actually play with it. Here we are in the web demo for Dialogflow. And we can ask things. So this is one thing here that I was a little disappointed with for Dialogflow as opposed to Google Actions, is that some of those conversation flow events don't seem to trigger correctly, at least in the web demo here. So our welcome is not displaying. So let's go ahead and just trigger it. Hello. All right, so we've got a little bit of information for what we can do. So that's our first time. Let's go ahead and ask for help. We can get more information. Okay, lots of good stuff in here. All right, so let's go ahead with the first intent. Let's get a gardening tip. Interesting. So this is telling us about clovers. They're in the pea family, which are nitrogen fixers. This is something that I found out recently. I always thought of clovers as just weeds, even though I liked to play with them when I was a kid. But it turns out you can actually buy the seeds in gardening stores, and they're advertised as really good for attracting pollinators like bees or even hummingbirds. And not only that, but they improve the soil itself. So cool. That's a cool little fact there. Let's find out. Let's see, we had a gardening tip. Let's say that we'd like to plant, clovers can be used as a cover crop. So let's see about that. So you can plant cover crops in November. That's really cool. What if we want to plant them in a different month? Oh, no, that is the only month that it offers. Let's see what else that we can plant in November. Turns out you can also plant fava beans, which turns out is another cover crop. These are also in the pea family, so they're used as nitrogen fixers. And you just till your cover crop, your clover, your fava beans into the soil come spring before they flower. So you don't get those seeds, but you do get all of that nitrogen that builds up. All right, so we've gone both directions on our plant recommender. Let's see if we need to water today. Oh, yes, indeed. We did actually get a little sprinkle today, which was nice to break up all the sunny weather we've been having with a little bit of moisture, but not quite enough. So it is, in fact, a good idea to water the garden today. I hope all of you remember to do so. Okay. Well, that is my presentation here. So thank you. I hope that you have enjoyed learning a few things about your garden, and I hope that all of your projects have gone well as well. Have a great evening.